Let me tell you about the day I learned that everything I thought I knew about humans was completely, utterly, and embarrassingly wrong. My name is Vexcar, and I'm what you might generously call a reformed idiot. Picture this. I'm sitting in the Galactic Council chamber, all 8 feet of scaled, clawed, apex predator glory that is a Zephyrian warrior. Around me, representatives from dozens of species are discussing the latest territorial disputes, trade agreements, and the usual bureaucratic nonsense that keeps the galaxy spinning. But today's hot topic, the humans. The human colonies continue to expand, wheezed Ambassador Gorthak, his tentacles writhing with what I assumed was concern. They're establishing settlements in contested sectors. I had to suppress a laugh. Humans, those soft, pink, barely evolved primates who couldn't even grow proper claws or scales. The galaxy's most successful prey species, somehow convinced they belonged among the predators. Perhaps we should assign additional security to monitor their activities, suggested Councillor Briex, her compound eyes clicking nervously. Now that got a genuine chuckle out of me. Security? For humans? I stood up, because when you're the room's only natural-born killer, you make sure everyone remembers it. Councillors, with all due respect, we're talking about a species that gets sunburned by their own star. They can't see in the dark, they have no natural weapons, and they're so weak they need machines to do their hunting for them. The chamber fell silent. Good. Time for some education. Humans are fascinating, I'll give you that. They're like those little scavenger birds that follow the real predators around, picking up scraps. Adorable, sure. Useful for certain tasks? Absolutely. But dangerous? Please. I gestured dismissively with one clawed hand. They're so harmless they keep other species as pets. They form emotional attachments to anything with eyes, including their own food sources. It's almost charming, in a pathetic sort of way. Several councillors nodded in agreement. See, this is why I was the Zephyrian representative. Logic, reason, and a healthy understanding of the natural order. However, and here's where Councillor Yara had to go and ruin my perfectly good morning, someone does need to monitor the Kepler 442 colony. There have been reports of unusual activity. Unusual activity, right. Probably humans trying to domesticate the local wildlife or something equally ridiculous. I volunteer, I announced, because honestly, how hard could babysitting duty be? A quick patrol, file a report about humans being humans, and back to real military work. The vote was unanimous. Of course it was. Who else would want to waste time watching hairless primates play house on some backwater planet? As I left the chamber, I was already planning my report. Humans continue to be soft, squishy, and utterly non-threatening. Recommend continued classification as harmless space hamsters. Mission accomplished. If only I knew then what I was about to learn. If only I understood that sometimes the most dangerous predator in the room is the one that doesn't look like a predator at all. But I'm getting ahead of myself. First, I had to meet Tommy. 3 days into my punishment tour of Kepler 432b, I was already composing my report in my head. Human colony exhibits typical human behavior, excessive emotional displays, inefficient resource allocation, and an alarming tendency to treat deadly alien fauna like potential household companions. Seriously, I watched a colonist try to feed a thornback beetle. A thornback beetle. These things can punch through titanium plating, and this human was offering it sandwich crumbs like it was some kind of pet. I was conducting my morning patrol through the Crimson Wastes, a particularly nasty stretch of alien wilderness that any sensible species would avoid, when I heard it, a sound that made my predator instincts snap to attention. Singing. Not the haunting war songs of my people, or the territorial calls of the local wildlife. No, this was some kind of cheerful, bouncy melody that had absolutely no business existing in a place where everything wanted to kill you. I followed the sound through a grove of razor-leaf trees, their metallic fronds chiming ominously in the wind until I found the source. A human cub, maybe 8 years old, sitting cross-legged next to a bubbling stream, completely oblivious to the fact that he was surrounded by enough deadly flora and fauna to stock a nightmare. Oh, come on, I muttered to myself. This is how humans supervise their young? Just let them wander into certain death while humming show tunes? The kid looked up at my approach, and instead of doing the sensible thing like screaming and running, he waved. He actually waved at me. 8 feet of armored predator dropping out of the trees, and this little pink bundle of vulnerability treats me like a friendly neighbor. Hi there, he called out, apparently delighted to meet what should have been his doom. Are you one of the good aliens or one of the scary ones? I blinked. Several times. Kid, I'm a Zephyrian warrior. We're literally engineered to be apex predators. The answer should be obvious. Cool, he scrambled to his feet, completely missing the point. I'm Tommy. What's your name? Why are your teeth so sharp? Do you eat people? My mom says not all aliens eat people, but the scary ones do. You don't look that scary, though. Before I could process this stream of consciousness attack, a stalker vine erupted from the undergrowth behind him. Now, stalker vines are nasty pieces of work. Think giant Venice flytrap crossed with a python, with a side order of paralyzing neurotoxin. Even seasoned Zephyrian warriors treat them with respect. This one was going straight for the oblivious human cub. I moved without thinking, my plasma cutter slicing through the vine's main body before it could grab Tommy. Green ichor splattered across the rocks as the thing writhed and died. Wow! Tommy spun around, examining the severed vine with scientific curiosity rather than terror. That was awesome. Thanks, Mr. What did you say your name was? Vexcar? I replied automatically, still trying to figure out why I'd just risked injury to save what should have been just another prey animal. And that was a stalker vine. It would have dissolved you from the inside out. Huh? Tommy poked the dead vine with a stick. Good thing you were here then. Are you going to help me get home? The casual assumption floored me. This tiny human just took it for granted that I, a complete stranger from a predator species, would naturally help him. The sheer audacity of it was almost impressive. Kid, I'm not a babysitting service. Your parents should have kept better track of you. Tommy's face fell slightly, but he bounced back with disturbing resilience. Mom and Dad are really busy with the new settlement. I was just exploring. I didn't mean to get lost. Lost. Of course he was lost. In the middle of the most dangerous wilderness on the planet, with night approaching and absolutely no survival gear except boundless optimism and a complete lack of self-preservation instincts. I looked at this small, helpless creature and felt something I didn't recognize. It wasn't hunger, which would have made sense. It wasn't contempt, which I'd expected. It was something else entirely. Fine, I heard myself saying. I'll get you back to the colony. But we do this my way and you follow orders, understood? Tommy's grin could have powered a small starship. Understood, this is going to be so cool. Cool. Right. What could possibly go wrong with escorting one small human through alien death world wilderness? As it turned out, absolutely everything. So, Tommy, I said, consulting my tactical display, the good news is I know exactly where your colony is. The bad news is it's 3 days away, through some of the most hostile terrain this planet has to offer. Tommy absorbed this information with the kind of calm acceptance that should have been my first real clue about humans. Okay. Do you have any snacks? Snacks. We're potentially facing death at every turn, and he's worried about snacks? I have military rations, I said, pulling out a nutrition pack designed for Zephyrian metabolism. But I don't think your digestive system can handle. Cool, thanks. Tommy grabbed the pack and bit straight through the wrapper. I watched in horrified fascination as he chewed thoughtfully, then swallowed without even flinching. That's actually not terrible, he announced. Tastes like chicken. That's concentrated Korthak beetle extract. It's designed to sustain a warrior through 3 days of combat. Neat. What's a Korthak beetle like? Are they the scary kind of alien or the cool kind? I stared at him. They're 12 feet long, have acid for blood, and their mating call can shatter reinforced glass. Definitely the cool kind, then. Tommy offered me half of a wrapped bar from his pocket. Want some? It's chocolate. Now, chocolate is one of those human foods that's supposedly toxic to most species. I'd heard stories about diplomatic incidents caused by well-meaning humans poisoning guests with their treats. But Tommy was looking at me with such hopeful expectation that I found myself taking the offered bar. It was actually pretty good. Sweet, with a complex flavor profile that suggested humans had put entirely too much thought into recreational food. Not that I'd ever admit it. Thanks, I said, trying to maintain some dignity. Now about the journey. We need to move fast and stay quiet. This region is full of predators that make stalker vines look like houseplants. What kind of predators? Tommy asked, falling into step beside me with disturbing ease. Are they bigger than you? Scarier than you? Do any of them breathe fire? None of them breathe fire, kid. This isn't a fairy tale. That's too bad. Fire breathing would be awesome. He paused thoughtfully. What's your planet like? Do you have families? Do Zephyrians like games? The questions came in a steady stream as we walked. Where was I from? What did Zephyrian children do for fun? Had I ever been to Earth? Did I know any other humans? What was my favorite color? That last one stopped me cold. My favorite color? Yeah, mine's blue. Like really deep blue, like the ocean back on Earth. What's yours? I realized I'd never been asked that question before. Zephyrian culture didn't really do favorite anything. We had efficient colors, camouflage colors, warning colors, but favorites? I don't have one, I said finally. Tommy looked genuinely shocked. Everyone has a favorite color. You just have to think about which one makes you feel happy. Happy. There was that alien concept again. Humans were obsessed with happiness, like it was some kind of tactical advantage. My people valued strength, honor, the satisfaction of a successful hunt. But happiness? The crimson of a sunrise after a successful battle, I heard myself saying. I suppose that's a color I find satisfactory. Crimson. That's a good one. Very dramatic. Tommy nodded approvingly. I bet you look really cool in battle, all fierce and warrior-like. Despite myself, I felt a small surge of something that might have been pride. Here was this tiny human, vulnerable as a newborn, complimenting my combat prowess like it mattered to him. Tommy, I said carefully, aren't you afraid of me? Even a little? He considered this seriously. Should I be? You saved me from the vine thing. You're helping me get home. You shared your food and listened to my questions. He shrugged with casual confidence. You seem pretty nice for a scary alien. Nice. A Zephyrian warrior. Nice. My ancestors were probably spinning in their funeral pyres. But as we continued through the alien landscape, Tommy chattering away about everything and nothing, I found myself actually listening. He told me about his parents, both scientists working to terraform the planet, about his pet fish back on Earth that he missed terribly, about how he wanted to be an explorer when he grew up, just like his heroes in the adventure stories. What about you? He asked eventually. What did you want to be when you grew up? A warrior, I said automatically. It's what all Zephyrian males become. But what did you want to be, before anyone told you what you had to be? The question hit me like a plasma bolt to the chest. Want. Zephyrians didn't deal in wants. We dealt in duty, tradition, the eternal hunt. But if I was honest, really honest. A teacher? I admitted quietly. I wanted to understand things, how they worked, why they existed. I wanted to share that knowledge. Tommy's smile was brilliant. That's awesome. You'd be a great teacher. You know all sorts of cool stuff about scary plants and dangerous aliens. For reasons I couldn't explain, that casual endorsement from a human child meant more to me than a dozen combat commendations. Which should have been my second clue about what I was dealing with. Humans, I was beginning to suspect, were a lot more dangerous than anyone realized. By the time the alien sun started its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and violet, I was beginning to understand why the Galactic Council had such trouble categorizing humans. Tommy had spent the entire afternoon systematically destroying every assumption I'd ever made about his species. We should make camp here, I announced, surveying a small clearing surrounded by ironbark trees. Their metallic trunks would provide decent shelter, and the elevated position gave us a tactical advantage. The shadow maws come out after dark. Shadow maws. Tommy perked up with that same disturbing enthusiasm he'd shown for every deadly creature we'd discussed. What are those like? Pack hunters. 8 legs, razor claws, and they can phase shift to become nearly invisible. Even experienced Zephyrian warriors avoid them. I began setting up a basic perimeter alarm system. They hunt by sound and heat signature, so we'll need to keep the fire small and conversation to a minimum. I expected Tommy to show some fear, maybe ask for reassurance. Instead, he nodded thoughtfully and started gathering specific types of fallen branches. Tommy, what are you doing? Collecting whisperwood, he said matter-of-factly. It burns cooler and doesn't throw sparks. Also, the smoke has a scent that most predators find unpleasant. He paused in his gathering. My dad taught me that. He's really good at this survival stuff. I stared at the small human. How do you know about whisperwood? That's advanced xenobotany. I read about it in Mom's research files. Also, I've been exploring the forests around the colony for months. Tommy arranged his collection with practiced efficiency. I know which berries are safe to eat, where the clean water sources are, and how to read the territorial markings of most local fauna. This was not supposed to be how this worked. Humans were supposed to be helpless without their technology. They were supposed to need constant protection from their betters. Tommy, I said slowly, how old did you say you were? 8 3/4. He started building a fire with movements that spoke of genuine experience. I know I'm not supposed to go into the deep forest alone, but there's so much cool stuff to see. Did you know that crystalline moss can actually predict weather changes up to 6 hours in advance? The color shifts are amazing. I watched this 8-year-old human construct a perfect wilderness camp while discussing xenobiology like it was casual conversation. My worldview was officially experiencing what humans would probably call a system error. As darkness fell, and the first haunting calls of nocturnal predators echoed through the forest, Tommy pulled out a small device and began recording detailed notes about everything he'd observed during our journey. "What's that for?" I asked. "My exploration journal. I document everything new I discover." He showed me pages of careful observations, detailed sketches, and theoretical questions. "Mom says curiosity is the most important human trait. Dad says it's probably going to get me killed someday, but Mom says that's what makes us human." The irony was staggering. Here I was, a supposedly superior predator, being educated about survival by a human child who treated deadly alien wilderness like his personal classroom. "Tommy," I said carefully, "why were you really out there alone today? And don't say exploration. 8-year-olds don't typically venture into the crimson wastes for fun." His expression grew serious for the first time since I'd met him. "Mom's been really sick lately. The doctors don't know what's wrong, but she's getting weaker. Dad's trying to hide how worried he is, but I can tell." I waited, recognizing the weight of something important. "There's a flower," Tommy continued quietly. "The aurora bloom. It only grows in the deep wilderness, and it might have properties that could help her. I know it was dangerous to go alone, but..." He shrugged with heartbreaking determination. "She's my mom." And there it was. The piece that made everything else make sense. This wasn't a reckless child wandering into danger for fun. This was a young human undertaking a quest that would challenge experienced warriors, driven by something my species had no equivalent for: unconditional love for family. "Tommy," I said softly, "aurora blooms are incredibly rare. The chances of finding one..." "I know the odds," his voice carried quiet steel. "But zero chance if I don't try, right?" I looked at this small human and finally understood what I was seeing. Not weakness, not foolish optimism. This was courage. Pure, undiluted, terrifying courage that made my own warrior training look like a child's game. "Tell me about your mother," I said. Tommy's face lit up, and for the next hour he painted a picture of Dr. Maria Santos, xenobiologist, terraforming specialist, and apparently the kind of parent who raised children capable of facing down alien wilderness for love. "Humans always says humans are explorers first and everything else second," Tommy explained. "That our job isn't to conquer new worlds, but to understand them. To find ways to live alongside whatever's already there." "Is that why humans make such effective colonists?" I asked. "Not because you're good at fighting, but because you're good at adapting?" "Maybe," Tommy poked at the fire with a stick. "Mom says every species has its own kind of strength. Yours is being really good at combat and protecting things. Ours is being really good at figuring out how to make friends. Friends. With everything. Including apex predators who should be eating them." "Vexkar?" Tommy's voice was getting drowsy. "Thank you for helping me. I know you didn't have to." I wanted to tell him it was duty, protocol, the natural order of stronger protecting weaker. Instead, I found myself saying, "You're welcome, cub." The words slipped out before I could stop it. Cub, the term Zephyrians used for their own young, for family. As Tommy curled up next to the fire, trustingly falling asleep under the protection of a creature that could end him without effort, I kept watch over the camp and tried to process what was happening to me. Somewhere between the chocolate sharing and the survival lessons, between the questions about favorite colors and the quiet revelation about his quest, this small human had done something impossible. He'd made me care, not just about his safety, though that was certainly part of it, but about him, his dreams, his family, his ridiculous optimism in the face of overwhelming odds. For the first time in my adult life, I was experiencing what humans called protectiveness, not the cold efficiency of a military mission, but something warm and fierce and utterly irrational. As I watched over Tommy's sleeping form, I realized that my understanding of humans had been not just wrong, but catastrophically backwards. They weren't weak. They were weaponized empathy. They turned everyone around them into family, and then fought with the fury of cornered animals to protect that family. No wonder they were so successful. No wonder other species found them so unsettling. They'd turned friendship into a form of conquest, and love into a tactical advantage. And somehow, without me noticing, they'd conquered me too. I should have known our peaceful night wouldn't last. In my experience, the universe has a twisted sense of humor, and nothing attracts trouble quite like a moment of actual contentment. The first sign something was wrong came at dawn. My perimeter alarms hadn't triggered, but something had set off every predatory instinct I possessed. The forest was too quiet. Even the morning scavengers had gone silent, which meant only one thing. The something apex was hunting nearby. I nudged Tommy awake as gently as my clawed hands allowed. Tommy, we need to move. Now. He came awake instantly, with none of the grogginess I'd expected from a human child. Another surprise. What's wrong? Ravagers, I whispered, already breaking down our camp with military efficiency. A pack, by the smell. They've been tracking us since sometime before dawn. Tommy's eyes widened, but I was relieved to see calculation rather than panic. How many? At least 6, maybe more. I shouldered my pack and checked my weapons. Tommy, I need you to listen very carefully. Ravagers are pack hunters. They're faster than me, stronger than me, and they hunt in coordinated groups. Our only advantage is that they're not particularly intelligent. What's the plan? Tommy asked, slipping his own small pack on with practiced ease. The plan. Right. The plan was that I was about to try protecting a human child from the most dangerous predators on this continent, armed with standard patrol gear and absolutely no backup. We run, I said simply. Fast as we can toward that ridgeline. There's a canyon system up there with narrow passages they can't follow us through. Tommy nodded, but I could see him thinking, always thinking this one. Zexkar, how good are Ravagers at climbing? Terrible. Their claws are designed for sprinting and killing, not scaling rock faces. Why? Instead of answering, Tommy pointed to a cluster of towering stone spires about half a kilometer to our east. What about those formations? Could we reach them? I studied the terrain with professional assessment. The spires were climbable, if you had the right equipment and training. Tommy, those are nearly vertical. Even if I could make the climb, you don't have the strength or... A bone-chilling howl cut through the morning air, followed by answering calls from at least 5 different directions. They've found our scent trail, I said grimly. Decision time, cub. Tommy's face set with that same quiet determination I'd seen when he talked about his mother. I can make the climb. Trust me. Trust. Such a simple word for something so terrifyingly complicated. We ran. I'd like to say it was a strategic withdrawal, a calculated tactical movement towards superior positioning. The truth was messier and more desperate. We crashed through the underbrush like a pair of panicked prey animals, while behind us the hunting howls grew steadily closer. Ravagers, for those fortunate enough never to encounter them, are what happens when evolution decides to create the perfect killing machine. Imagine a cross between a wolf and a motorcycle, with the social structure of army ants and the moral flexibility of a tax collector. They were gaining on us. Tommy, I panted as we scrambled over a fallen log. When we reach those spires, you climb first. Don't look back, don't wait for me. Just climb. What about you? I'll hold them off as long as I can. Tommy skidded to a stop so suddenly I nearly trampled him. No! Tommy, this isn't a discussion. I'm a warrior, you're a civilian cub. My job is to... No. His voice carried an authority that had no business coming from someone his size. We both climb, or we both fight. I'm not leaving you behind. The loyalty in his voice hit me like a physical blow. Here was this small human, faced with certain death, and his primary concern was abandoning me. Tommy, be reasonable. I'm expendable. You have a family that needs you. You're not expendable. Tommy's jaw set with stubborn human determination. Not to me. Before I could argue further, the first Ravager burst from the tree line. Up close, they're even more terrifying than their reputation suggests. 8 feet of lean muscle, midnight black fur, and teeth designed by a committee of nightmares. This one took one look at us and let out a hunting call that made my bones ache. Climb, I roared, drawing my plasma cutter as the rest of the pack emerged from the forest. Tommy scrambled up the nearest spire with surprising agility, but instead of continuing to safety, he stopped about 20 feet up and started doing something with his pack. Tommy, what are you doing? Keep climbing. Just give me 30 seconds, he called back, his hands working frantically on some kind of device. 30 seconds. I could do 30 seconds. The first Ravager came at me in a classic pack hunter rush, expecting me to focus on the obvious threat while its packmates flanked me. Standard predator tactics, and it might have worked if I'd been protecting myself instead of the most important thing in my suddenly reorganized universe. My plasma cutter took the lead Ravager's head clean off. The second one learned that a motivated Zephyrian warrior has claws for a reason. The third discovered that protective fury makes you do stupid, dangerous, surprisingly effective things. But there were 6 of them, and only 1 of me, and even Zephyrid berserker rage has its limits. The 4th Ravager got past my guard and opened up my left arm from shoulder to elbow. The 5th knocked me flat and was going for my throat when Tommy's voice rang out from above. "Vexcar, cover your eyes." I squeezed my eyes shut just as the world exploded in blinding white light. The Ravagers, suddenly rendered completely blind, stumbled around in confused panic. Whatever Tommy had done, it was like a miniature sun had gone off above our heads. "Magnesium flare," Tommy called down. "Dad taught me to carry them for emergencies. Can you climb?" My left arm was useless and I was bleeding from half a dozen wounds, but I could climb, especially with Tommy calling down encouragement every few feet, telling me where to put my hands, warning me about loose rocks. By the time we reached a safe ledge about 60 feet up, the Ravagers had given up and wandered off in search of easier prey. Tommy immediately started fussing over my injuries with a basic medical kit that seemed far too advanced for a child to be carrying. "Hold still," he said, cleaning the worst of the cuts with professional competence. "This might sting a little." It stung a lot, but I barely noticed. I was too busy staring at this 8-year-old human who had just saved my life with quick thinking, advanced planning, and a complete disregard for his own safety. "Tommy," I said carefully, "where did you learn field medicine?" Mom and Dad made sure I knew the basics before they let me start exploring. He applied a bandage with steady hands. They said if I was going to be stubborn about wandering off, I needed to be prepared for the consequences. "And the flare, the climbing skills, the survival knowledge?" Tommy shrugged like it was obvious. "Humans prepare for stuff. It's what we do." I thought about that as he worked on my wounds. Humans prepare. Not just physically, but mentally, emotionally. They looked at a dangerous universe and decided that the best defense was to become the kind of people who could handle anything. "Tommy," I said quietly, "when you said you wouldn't leave me behind, did you mean that?" He looked up from the bandage he was applying. "Of course I meant it. You're family now." Family, just like that. No ceremony, no formal adoption, no complex ritual. I'd saved him, he'd saved me, and now we were family. It was the most human thing imaginable. And also, I was beginning to realize, the most terrifying. Because if this was how humans treated one alien warrior who'd helped a lost child, what did they do when someone threatened their entire species? The answer to that question came when we finally reached New Haven Colony, the next afternoon. I'd expected a simple drop-off. Hand over the kid, file my report, return to proper military duties with a slightly better understanding of human psychology. What I got instead was a complete reconstruction of everything I thought I knew about civilization. The moment we crested the final hill and the colony came into view, Tommy let out a whoop of joy and started waving at the settlement below. Within seconds, it seemed like every human in the place had spotted us. "Tommy's back, and he's got someone with him." What happened next defied every rule of interspecies protocol I'd ever learned. Instead of cautious approaches and formal identification procedures, what I got was a full-scale human emotional response. People came running from every direction. Not soldiers, not security personnel, just people. Scientists, engineers, farmers, teachers, children, elderly folks moving as fast as their legs could carry them. And every single one of them was focused on Tommy like he was the most precious thing in the universe. "Tommy!" A woman with Tommy's eyes and a face drawn with worry broke from the crowd and swept him into a hug that looked like it might crack ribs. "Oh, sweetheart, we were so scared. Your father's been organizing search parties for 2 days straight." Dr. Maria Santos, I realized. Tommy's mother. The sick woman he'd risked everything to help. She looked pale and tired, but the relief in her voice was like music. "Mom, I'm okay." Tommy squirmed in the embrace, but he was grinning. "I found an aurora bloom, and I made a friend. This is Vexcar. He saved my life like 6 times. And just like that, the attention of 40-plus humans shifted to me. I'd like to say I handled it with dignity. The truth is, I nearly took a step backward. Not because they were threatening, quite the opposite. The gratitude in their faces was so intense it was almost physical. "Thank you." Dr. Santos approached me with tears in her eyes. "Thank you for bringing him home. I struggled for words. He's a remarkable child. Demons is that." A tall man with calloused hands and worried eyes stepped forward. Dr. Carlos Santos, presumably. Tommy's father. I'm Carlos. Maria and I can never repay what you've done. No payment is necessary, I said automatically, then paused because that wasn't quite true anymore. He saved my life as well, multiple times. Carlos smiled, and I recognized where Tommy got his easy warmth. That sounds like our boy, always bringing home strays. Strays. I'd been classified as a stray. What followed was the most overwhelming display of human pack bonding I'd ever witnessed. Within minutes, I found myself surrounded by grateful parents, curious children, and adults who seemed genuinely interested in hearing about our journey. They fed me, food specifically prepared to be safe for Zephyrian physiology because apparently someone had researched that while I was gone. They tended to my remaining injuries with medical supplies that were far too advanced for a frontier colony. They found me temporary quarters and made sure I had everything I might need for a comfortable stay. But it was the children that really drove the point home. Tommy had apparently spent his first hour back telling every kid in the colony about our adventure, with the result that I found myself surrounded by a dozen small humans asking rapid-fire questions about Zephyrian culture, what space combat was like, and whether I wanted to see their pet rock collections. "Are all Zephyrians as nice as you?" asked a girl who couldn't have been more than 6. "Do you want to stay here with us?" added a boy with missing front teeth. "Tommy says you're really good at fighting scary monsters. Will you teach us?" I looked around at these small, trusting faces and felt something inside my chest that I had no name for. These children weren't afraid of me. They were adopting me, just like Tommy had, just like their parents were doing. "X-Car?" Tommy appeared at my elbow, practically vibrating with excitement. "Want to see something really cool?" He led me to the colony's central research lab, where Dr. Santos was examining the aurora bloom he'd risked everything to find. Under the microscope, the flower's cellular structure revealed compounds that did indeed show promise for treating her condition. "It might not be a cure," she said softly, "but it could buy us time to find one." Tommy knew the odds were against him, I said. He went anyway. "That's humans for you," Carlos chuckled. "We specialize in impossible odds." As the day wore on, I began to understand what I was witnessing. This wasn't just a grateful community welcoming a hero. This was a demonstration of the single most dangerous capability in the known galaxy. Humans didn't just form pack bonds with their own species. They formed pack bonds with everyone, and once you were part of the pack, they would move heaven and earth to protect you. I watched Tommy's parents fuss over him like he'd been gone for years instead of days. I watched the colony's children adopt me as their new favorite uncle. I watched adults who barely knew me go out of their way to make me comfortable and welcome. And I finally understood why the Galactic Council was really worried about human expansion. It wasn't their technology, though that was impressive. It wasn't their adaptability, though that was remarkable. It wasn't even their courage, though Tommy had certainly demonstrated that in abundance. It was this casual, effortless transformation of strangers into family, this ability to make anyone and everyone care about their success and survival. Humans weren't conquering the galaxy with weapons or superior firepower. They were conquering it with friendship, with kindness, with the simple, revolutionary idea that everyone deserved to belong somewhere. They were the ultimate social predators, and their weapon was love. "Vexcar?" Tommy found me as I sat on the colony's observation deck, watching the alien sunset and trying to process everything I'd learned. "Are you okay? You look kind of confused." "I am confused," I admitted. "Tommy, when you said I was family, what did you mean exactly?" Tommy considered this with his characteristic seriousness. "It means we look out for each other. It means if you're in trouble, we help. It means you belong here if you want to." "Even though I'm not human?" "Especially because you're not human," Tommy grinned. "Families are better when they're different, more interesting." I thought about my conversation with the Galactic Council, my certainty that humans were harmless prey animals. I thought about 3 days in the wilderness with the bravest, most adaptable, most dangerously caring creature I'd ever encountered. "Tommy," I said slowly, "I think I'd like to request a transfer, permanent assignment to human space." "Really?" His face lit up like a small sun. "That would be awesome. You could teach the other kids about alien cultures and help with the dangerous wildlife, and Mom and Dad would love having someone with your expertise on the research team." Just like that, my entire future was planned out by an 8-year-old human who'd decided I belonged. 3 months later, I submitted my final report to the Galactic Council. "Humans represent a clear and present danger to existing galactic power structures," I wrote. "Not through military conquest or technological superiority, but through their uncanny ability to transform potential enemies into willing allies. They are not a prey species. They are apex social predators, whose primary weapon is the irresistible urge to adopt everything they encounter. Recommendation: do not attempt to control or contain human expansion. It will not work. Instead, prepare for the inevitable moment when they decide you're part of their family. Trust me, resistance is futile, and honestly, you probably won't want to resist anyway. Current status: permanently assigned to New Haven Colony, as cultural liaison and apparently honorary uncle to every human child on the planet. I have never been happier. End report. Tommy was right about families, it turns out. They really are better when they're different. And humans, bless their terrifying, wonderful hearts, have the biggest family in the galaxy.